You just paid $150 for a piece of ocean garbage. Julian stood in the center of the mahogany auction room. He casually adjusted the cuffs of his custom-tailored Italian suit. He pointed a manicured finger at the wooden pedestal on the stage. Sitting there was a heavy, rusted lump of metal. It was completely crusted in dead barnacles, dried sea salt, and green algae. It looked like something a commercial fishing net had dragged up from the mud by accident. The room full of wealthy art collectors and gallery owners chuckled softly. Julian was the CEO of the most prestigious antique gallery in the city. When he called something garbage, the elite crowd immediately agreed. Elias did not laugh. He stood quietly at the very back of the room, near the exit doors. He was wearing a faded canvas work apron over a plain flannel shirt. His rough, calloused hands firmly held the winning cardboard paddle. His other hand held the small fingers of his 7-year-old son, Leo. Elias looked at the rusted lump, then looked at Julian, and gave a small, polite nod. He didn't argue or try to defend his purchase. He just walked up to the clerk, handed over his crumpled cash, and took his heavy item. He didn't bother explaining what his trained eyes had caught. In the brief moment, the auctioneer turned the lump around. People are always in a massive rush to judge you by your cover. If you are out there working hard in silence and refusing to let anyone else put a price tag on your life, leave a comment saying, "I trust my true value," and subscribe to the channel to walk this journey with us. The drive back to their neighborhood in Brooklyn was quiet and peaceful. Elias ran a small, independent watch repair shop, squeezed between a noisy laundromat and an old bakery. It was not a glamorous life by any means. The bills were always tight, but it was a free life, and it allowed him to be there every single day when his boy came home from school. The shop smelled heavily of brass polish, aged cedar wood, and the steady, comforting ticking of 100 different clocks. He wasn't trying to build a massive corporate empire to impress people like Julian. He was just trying to build a solid college fund for Leo. Elias carried the heavy, barnacle-crusted lump inside and set it down onto his worn wooden workbench. Leo immediately pulled up his step stool and rested his chin on his hands. "What is actually inside there, Dad?" Leo's eyes were wide, with the pure, unfiltered curiosity that only a child can have. Elias reached up and pulled a specialized magnifying loupe down over his right eye. "Time, buddy." Elias smiled warmly, gently tapping the rock-hard crust of salt with his finger. The most valuable things in this world are usually hidden the best. Julian and the rest of the arrogant crowd at the maritime salvage auction saw only irreversible corrosion. They saw a dead, worthless paperweight, salvaged from a nameless 18th century shipwreck. But Elias was a third-generation master horologist. He knew a fundamental rule of metallurgy that the wealthy art dealers usually ignored. Salt water will completely destroy iron and cheap steel in a matter of weeks, but it cannot destroy high-grade maritime brass or solid gold. And beneath the thick layers of ocean debris, Elias had spotted the faintest gleam of a very specific gear-tooth profile. It was a cut of metal he had only ever seen in historical textbooks. By midnight, Leo was fast asleep in his bedroom upstairs. The shop downstairs was completely silent, except for the rhythmic ticking of the wall clocks. Any amateur dealer would have taken a heavy hammer and a steel chisel to the rust to see what was inside. That was exactly how you ruined a fragile historical masterpiece. Elias worked with the extreme patience of a man who understood that pressure does not force perfection. He went to the back room and mixed a mild, traditional herbal acid solution his grandfather had taught him how to make decades ago. Using a very soft bristle brush, he applied the liquid drop by drop to the thickest part of the crust. He waited. He applied slightly more. He sat there at his bench for 3 consecutive nights, He let the gentle solution slowly eat away. The centuries of hard marine buildup, his lower back ached terribly, and his eyes burned from the intense focus. But he simply refused to stop. On the third night, at exactly 2 a.m, a tiny, sharp sound broke the silence of the shop. Click! A large, heavy chunk of the barnacle shell split cleanly down the middle and slid off onto the rubber work mat. Elias held his breath. He reached for his precision tweezers and gently brushed away the remaining loose gray sand. Under the harsh bright light of his desk lamp, a flawless white enamel dial emerged from the dark cavity. It didn't have a single scratch or crack on its surface. Right below it sat a massive, highly complex dual-gear escapement mechanism. It was crafted entirely from an unoxidized gold and brass alloy. The gears were perfectly preserved, locked in time. It was a staggering level of engineering that absolutely should not have existed on a standard merchant ship. The most successful people in life are the ones who dare to be patient when absolutely no one else believes in their vision. If you are fighting through the late, lonely nights to secure a better future for your family, type, "I trust my true value." Elias carefully wiped the remaining residue from the lower brass plate. He leaned in close and let his magnifying glass focus on a tiny, hand-engraved inscription. It read, H0, 1758. Elias felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He was looking at the mythical prototype of the John Harrison marine chronometer. Historical records claimed this exact piece had sank with a Royal Navy frigate over 2 centuries ago. It was the holy grail of maritime navigation. By 10 o'clock the next morning, a silver sedan pulled up to the curb outside the small repair shop. Dr. Elias, a leading professor of maritime history, rushed through the front door. Elias had sent him 3 high-resolution macro photographs of the internal gears. The elderly professor did not say a word when he saw the polished machine sitting on the work mat. He simply pulled out his own loop, inspected the escapement wheel, and slowly dropped to his knees. Tears welled up in the old man's eyes as he gently touched the brass frame. "History is alive," the professor whispered, his voice trembling with overwhelming emotion. The news spread through the tightly knit world of high-end antiquities faster than a wildfire. It took exactly 4 hours for the rumors to reach Julian's pristine corporate office. The arrogant CEO realized immediately what he had auctioned off for $150. If his billionaire board of directors found out he had thrown away a priceless historical artifact, his career in the art world would be instantly destroyed. At 3 in the afternoon, a black luxury SUV slammed its brakes right in front of Elias's shop. Julian stepped out, but his confident swagger was completely gone. His expensive suit was wrinkled, and his forehead was covered in a cold, desperate sweat. He pushed the shop door open so hard, the welcome bell rattled violently. He slammed a heavy silver briefcase down on the glass counter, right next to Leo's school books. "I will give you $200,000 in untraceable cash right now," Julian said, his voice completely erratic. "You sign a non-disclosure agreement, and I take the machine back to my gallery before the press finds out." Leo shrank back, clearly intimidated by the frantic man in the suit. Elias placed a gentle, reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. He did not raise his voice, and he did not show a single ounce of anger. He looked at the open briefcase full of $100 bills, then looked Julian dead in the eye. He slowly pushed the briefcase back across the glass counter. "You stood on a stage and told everyone this was ocean garbage," Elias said calmly. "My shop does not sell garbage." Julian's face turned completely pale, as the reality of his massive mistake finally crushed him. Never lower your standards for people who only respect you when you have something they desperately need. If you have the courage to stand your ground, boldly declare, "I trust my true value." 7 days later, a special emergency session was held at the International Auction House. The room was packed with museum curators, historians, and elite private collectors from all over the world. Julian was forced to sit in the very back row, his head bowed in total defeat. He had already been permanently fired by his board of directors that morning. The gavel came down with a heavy, echoing crack. Sold to the National Maritime Museum for $6.2 million. The room erupted into massive applause. Elias did not jump up and down or celebrate wildly. He just looked down at Leo, gave him a warm smile, and quietly walked out the side door. The very next morning, at exactly 7 o'clock, Elias unlocked the front door of his small shop. The bell chimed with the same peaceful rhythm it always had. Leo walked in carrying his backpack, looking around the modest room. "Dad, now that we are rich, what are we going to do today?" Elias tied his faded canvas apron around his waist and pulled his step stool up to the workbench. "I am going to finish fixing Mrs. Smith's pendulum clock." Elias smiled. "Money changes your bank account, but doing the right thing is the real wealth. Money can change your circumstances, but it should never be allowed to change your character. For the final time, please leave a comment saying, 'I trust my true value.' Make sure to subscribe to the channel and share this video with any man who needs a reminder of his own quiet strength. We will see you in the next story.